Welcome back. Tell your own true scary story. These are all allegedly true story submissions. I was celebrating my Quinceanera during mid-October of 2022. It wasn't going to be a huge party since I didn't really want one, but since I'm the only girl in my family, my parents felt it was necessary to throw me a party. Our chosen venue was a public park in the middle of our town, a popular site for many celebrations. When you were having a celebration there, everybody knew what it was, who you were, and regardless of whether they were invited or not, they would attend, some just to drink booze and dance. Everything was going well on the day of my party. I had a special father-daughter dance. All my friends came to support me. It is one of my favorite memories. There was a rodeo happening that same day as well, so not everybody who was invited showed up until 10 p.m. That's when those who weren't even invited started to arrive, just to drink and watch the party. As 11 p.m. rolled around, pretty much all my friends and the guests had left except those who were helping with cleaning up the park. It was cold, so not many offered to help. People scattered throughout the park, cleaning up all the trash from the kids who didn't know how to clean up after themselves. I, however, stayed back with a family friend on a bench where all the food and presents were. I couldn't really clean with my big dress on without it getting really dirty. In the midst of this cleanup, there was another group present, a group of guys who I had never seen before in my life. There had to be about 5 of them, all with booze in their hands, wearing baseball caps and dressed in black. They definitely didn't look like they had come from the rodeo, nor did they look like they were there for my party. Their ages ranged from early 20s to late 40s. I didn't exactly notice them until I sat down on the bench and began talking to my friend. That's when I noticed them, just standing there, staring at me. Now, keep in mind, I'm a 15-year-old girl, skinny and short with a big dress. I could have easily been overpowered by any one of these guys, and I knew that, so I became paranoid very quickly. At first, I didn't think much of it and figured they must be looking at the decorations or just my dress since it was quite flamboyant. Then one of the guys, the youngest looking one, started walking up to me and handed me a $100 bill. He said absolutely nothing, didn't even smile. This odd behavior made everything much more peculiar since people usually say, "Congratulations," or "I love your dress." But all this guy did was widen his eyes at me as he came closer. I took the money and said thank you so much, placing it in the box where I kept all the money I received. My family friend then left and I was left alone with all these men standing probably 5 feet in front of me, all huddled up in a group just intensely staring at me. I quickly became extremely uncomfortable, but I didn't know what to do. They weren't even trying to be discreet about it. They all had their eyes wide open just looking at me. I don't know if they were drunk or high or just plain stupid, but whatever it was, they didn't seem like they had good intentions. Being polite, I smiled when I made eye contact with them. I was always taught to be friendly to guests, but when I looked away, they would make noises at me, whistles or calls, like those used to attract an animal's attention. They started getting closer, whispering to each other. Thankfully, a sort of miracle happened. My older brothers came over to ask me if I wanted to leave with them since they were going back home. I immediately said yes, and told them about the creepy guys who had been staring at me. They told me that I should have said something as soon as I got uncomfortable. And they were right. I still cringe at the fact that I didn't get up and walk away or go find someone to talk to. But I was frozen. I didn't know what to do or what to think. When I tried to point them out to my brothers, they had already disappeared. But the story, unfortunately, doesn't necessarily end there. A couple weeks went by, and then out of the blue, I received a Facebook friend request. At this point, I had already somewhat forgotten about the incident, until I looked at the profile picture of the friend request, and I recognized the guy in the picture as one of the creeps. I was terrified and immediately showed my brothers. One of them texted the account, telling him to stay the hell away from me. I reported and blocked the account, then ended up creating a whole new different Facebook account under a different name. Even now, I just can't fathom what could have happened if I had been completely alone with those guys for any longer, or if they had found more than just my Facebook account. I was living alone in a quiet neighborhood in Georgia. One afternoon, my home phone rang. Thinking it would be a sales call or something, I answered. But there was no one there. This happened again and again for about an hour. It was weird, sure, but I didn't think too much of it. Later that night, a neighbor of mine, who is a cop, approached me with some troubling news. Apparently, some houses in our neighborhood had been robbed. He said the robbers were likely calling houses to see if anyone was home before they broke in. The thought that I could have been robbed, it scared me a lot. The very next day, I got a home security system. Despite this measure, I must confess, I don't really feel safe in my neighborhood anymore. In 2018, I found myself on the road, driving from Los Angeles to Phoenix to visit my cousin. This was a route I knew well, having made the journey several times before. About halfway into the drive, something caught my eye. There was a hitchhiker by the side of the road. Now I knew, as most people do, that you're not supposed to pick up hitchhikers. But that day, it was really hot and I just felt bad for him. He seemed like a normal guy at first. He thanked me for the ride and said he was headed to Phoenix too. But as we drove on, his behavior began to change. He kept checking his phone, appeared nervous, and when I probed about what he was going to do in Phoenix, he gave vague answers. After about an hour on the road, I made a stop at a gas station to use the restroom. When I came back, the guy was gone. That's when I noticed my glove compartment. It was open, and my wallet, which I had foolishly left there, was missing. Without wasting any time, I called the police and promptly canceled my credit cards. A week later, I heard back from the police. They had managed to catch the guy while he was trying to use one of my cards. Turns out he had been running a scam, pretending to be a hitchhiker and robbing the unsuspecting Samaritans who offered him a ride. While I felt fortunate not to have been harmed physically, the experience really shook me, and since then, I've never picked up a hitchhiker. This happened a couple months ago. I had recently moved to a small town in Colorado. It was a quiet place, perfect for someone like me who works from home. And I had found my rhythm in a routine that included a late-night jog. You see, I've always been a night owl, but one night during my usual run, I noticed something unusual. There was a man standing at the corner of the street. He was just standing there, not moving, just staring at me as I jogged by. I was a little freaked out, but brushed it off thinking he was probably just out for a walk. But the next night he was there again, and the night after that the same. He was always at the same spot. He'd just stand there, watching me. He never tried to talk to me or approach me, but the fact that he was always there, always watching, it was really unnerving. I confided in my friends about it, but their responses were dismissive. They suggested I was probably overthinking it. Nevertheless, I decided to change my jogging route, and for a few nights, everything seemed normal. But then, one night, as I was out jogging, I saw him again. He was standing at the corner of a different street just like before. This time, I called the police. They assured me they'd keep an eye out, but without any explicit threatening behavior, they admitted they couldn't do much. I changed my routine after that, trading in my late-night jogs for workouts at the local gym. I never saw the man again after that, but the memory of him still gives me the creeps. This happened a couple years ago. I was living in a small apartment in San Francisco at the time. I worked from home and seldom ventured out. One afternoon, right in the middle of a video conference, I heard a knock on the door. Assuming it was a delivery, I politely excused myself from the meeting and went to see who it was. Peering through the peephole, I saw a man I didn't recognize. He looked nervous. He kept knocking and looking around. Through the closed door, I questioned his identity and purpose. He claimed to be from the maintenance department, mentioning something about a gas leak in the building. He was insistent. He needed to check my apartment, he said. Something about him didn't sit right with me. I informed him that I'd call the building's office to confirm his story. As soon as I said this, he became agitated. He started banging on the door, demanding that I let him in. Swiftly, I dialed the building manager. Turns out no maintenance had been scheduled. As I was confirming this, the man had vanished. Later, we found out from the police that a series of burglaries had been reported in the area, all following the same MO. The experience left me shaken, and now, I always double-check the identity of anyone claiming to be maintenance.